Good morning. Today I want to talk about making mistakes. Yesterday we talked about how to set our goals and measure our progress via inputs rather than outputs. A very important related subject if we are looking at making progress and growing and improving is how we deal with making mistakes. Making mistakes, first of all, I would say is not something you need to deal with as if it's a bad thing. This is the first, most important concept to understand. Mistakes are not to be mourned over. They're something essential. Not only are they not bad, they are extremely useful. They are essential to progress. Because it is only by making mistakes and correcting them that we actually see how we can improve. And the principle sounds like this: make as many mistakes as possible while still remaining in the game. So make mistakes, but don't make fatal ones. Non-fatal mistakes that don't take you out of the game, they're good to have as many as possible as long as you learn from them. That's the second thing. You need to learn from them. Just avoid the big mistakes. Now, you might be saying, hey, Obi, you're kind of backtracking here. You said mistakes are great. They're the greatest thing ever. And now you kind of say, well, there's just one type of mistake. That's okay. Actually, no, because no huge mistake, no game-ending mistake happens out of the blue. Everything was fine. Everything was green. Everything was nice. Everything was solid. And all of a sudden, with no warning, no way of seeing, no way of preventing it, no possible way to avoid. All systems green, ship has exploded. No, there are some warnings in between. There are some smaller mistakes being made and not getting addressed, not being learned from, that accumulate and actually lead to the big mistake. The game-ending mistakes are the result of not learning from the small mistakes, not course correcting. Think of driving a car. It should be familiar to most people. You're driving a car down a straight road, nonetheless. No traffic. You're alone on the highway. Okay? You are driving alone on the highway, on a straight highway, straight as far as the eye can see, like Route 66, straight, through the desert. No one, nobody on the road but you. Answer me this. Are you moving the steering wheel? Of course you are. My next question is, why are you moving the steering wheel? Like, it's a straight road. Why not just go straight? Going straight doesn't involve moving the steering wheel. Or does it? Well, those of us who have driven a car know that it does. That's weird. Why would I need, and I'm not talking about any self-driving, my car now has enough self-driving assistance to correct and maintain the lane by itself. It does this also by moving the wheel. So why the hell would we be moving the wheel if we are going straight? Could it be, and spoiler, it is, that we're moving the wheel because we're constantly correcting for tiny mistakes? We are never on the correct path to our destination, even on a straight, empty highway. We can never be precise enough, and our steering wheels aren't accurate enough to create an input so finely tuned that we set the wheel orientation and then tape it in place, right? And just keep on the gas pedal. And eventually we get there. No. Like, in no further than a couple of 100 meters or a kilometer, if you're really, really good. I don't know what kind of car is that and what kind of superhuman driver you are. But even at that level, you'd still go in a ditch. Why? Because your direction wasn't perfectly straight. So the wheel moves because you're constantly course correcting. You are correcting for tiny errors the direction of the car. At any point, it's either going too far right or too far left. Political puns not intended. At either point, it's going too far right or too far left, and you're noticing this, and then you're adjusting the wheel. So basically, to get the goal, to get the big win of getting to your destination and not going off the road, not making the big mistake, totaling your car by just going into the environment, to do that, what you're actually doing is making a series of mistakes. Every move you make along the way of driving your car is a mistake. It's just good enough for now, for a short amount of time. It's within the acceptable margin of error, but we know it's wrong, and we're going to revisit that decision and adjust for it later. And we're going to learn, because we're learning constantly by making mistakes. So I made a mistake of turning my car too far left. I'm going to hit the left curb. I learned that I'm going to hit the left curb if I keep going like this. So I adjust the wheel to the right. Hey, editing over here. Speaking of making mistakes and learning from them, I'm just realizing now, as I'm listening to this before I upload it, that I made the mistake of not taking the sound of the windshield wipers into account. So it was raining this morning when I was driving to the office, and as you might know, I'm recording these live, so to speak, as I drive to the office in the morning, and the sound you might be hearing in the background that's really annoying, that's the sound of the windshield wipers. I apologize for that. And in the future, I am definitely going to take this into account. I hope there's very few rainy mornings, because I do want to record each morning. But if it rains, I'm just going to record at the office instead of on the road. Thank you. Let's keep going. Do you see how it works? It's impossible to drive without making a constant series of mistakes, because we have a limited capacity for thinking and processing reality. So we constantly need to error correct. This is, by the way, the same system by which consciousness works. They figured out that while our senses take in a huge amount of data, our consciousness is only able to process a very small stream of that data. So that means the way our brains work is similar to a compression algorithm in a computer, because we actually hallucinate most of reality. We only consciously process the parts that need to be corrected from that hallucination in order for it to match up better with the actual external objective reality. So even our consciousness works in a manner that's based on error correction, on making mistakes. Like, the only way we can function and process our sense data is if we can do a bunch of assumptions that are wrong and just correct the most important ones that are wrong. Our brain does this. And we can get away with processing so little data as our brains do. So bottom line, you need to embrace making mistakes. Set yourself a mistake quota. Each day, you should be making a certain number of mistakes. If you're not, where you're not actually learning or growing. The only thing you do when ignoring a mistake, not admitting a mistake, disowning a mistake, not taking responsibility for a mistake, is you're wasting a good mistake. Because the way you end up in a ditch, you end up totaling your car, is precisely by not owning up to the fact that, hey, I'm not going in the right direction right now, and I need to correct for it. I made an error, and I need to correct for it. Because the more complicated the driving gets, the more potential for errors. Right? We had the scenario of us driving in a straight line down an empty road, but think of curves in the road, ups and downs and obstacles and potholes and other drivers. Oh my God. Like, it gets complicated. The moment you stop acknowledging your mistakes and learning from them and correcting them is the moment you're heading for a big mistake. And, even those are recoverable. Like, you can hit some potholes, you can scrape another guy's or gal's car. But if you don't acknowledge what each mistake means, this is going to be an increasing process. It's a downward spiral. And if you've ever seen anybody go down the deep end, you know how it goes. It's not all of a sudden they have a perfect life and boom, everything's in shambles and they're divorced and homeless. No. If you trace it back, Peterson talks about this. This is basically a quote from Jordan Peterson. He says that he's never seen anybody get away with anything in his entire clinical practice. Working as a psychologist with clients, every time there was a big issue in their lives, he would always go and trace it back with them. And so, how did you get here? What did you do before this? What caused you to be here? And they would say, well, I did A and B. And okay, so what did you do before that? What did you do that caused you to get there? Well, I did X, and then before that, what led to X? I did Y, and then Z, and they go back down the chain until they find all the things that they've been ignoring. At any point in this chain, they had the capacity to take a look, an honest look at themselves and their life, and assess for the mistakes and correct for them. And what happens is a very interesting phenomena. If you fail to correct enough, the mistakes pile up and they get bigger and the situation gets worse, and it seems so much harder to correct for. And this is true. It just piles up. So minuscule mistakes pile up into small mistakes, pile up into medium mistakes, pile up into big mistakes, pile up into huge mistakes, pile up into disastrous, game-ending mistakes. This is how it goes. And this is why the Matthew Principle works as it does. To those who have, more will be given. To those who have not, even that which they still have will be taken from them. This is why. Because it's a compounding effect. Errors compound. The effect from one uncorrected error compounds with the effects from other errors. Your past errors, if not addressed, compound with your current errors, which, if not addressed, will compound with your future errors. And at one point, it might seem, if you don't analyze it or if you're looking from the outside, that, hey, that took a turn for the worst quite quick. That jumped up a notch, as the meme says. That escalated quickly. Then it did. Well, actually, it didn't. Actually, it escalated quite slowly. But it was just you that ignored it and now it's come home to roost. Nobody gets away with anything long term. I'm not saying we live in a fair and just world or a just universe. No. That's not the case. That's not what that means. Getting away with something in this context means getting away with not suffering the consequences of your own actions. And they might not happen in the way that some people might like somebody committing a crime might get away, quote unquote, with not being punished by the law for that crime. But a guilty conscience is the worst thing one can have. And those who do get away with crimes and they don't pay their debt to society, they live with guilty consciences. Like someone said, it's like a rabid wolf tearing you up from the inside. It's horrible. And if they don't have a guilty conscience, well, then they have no conscience to begin with. They cannot be held accountable for their actions. They're a psychopath who doesn't even realize what they've done, or they have brain damage, or it's just a fact of nature. You could consider it an act of God, just like a natural disaster. Who's to feel guilty for an earthquake? Or for a completely psychopathic, remorseless person doing something to hurt others because they have no capacity for empathy, because they have no mirror neurons, because reasons to which I'm not going to get into right now. Okay, so this is it. This is the other ingredient. Make mistakes. Embrace mistakes. Welcome mistakes. Look for them as if you would be looking for a messenger bringing good news. Because it is good news. It's news about how you're messing up. Because all of us, at any point, we are all of us messing up. It's just, are we aware of it or not? How aware are we of how much we're messing up? And how much do we do to correct it? Because our consciousness is built in such a way that it's inevitable for us to mess up. There is no scenario in which you do not mess up. Absolutely none. The only way to not mess up is to not do anything. And that, I think, is messing up the most. Is not doing anything out of fear of messing up. Anything you do, you're going to mess up. We all are. And then it just becomes a matter of realizing where you're messing up and how, and correcting for it. And then messing up again in new ways, and then so on and so on. And mistakes are think of them as the little messengers coming in with news about, hey, sire, this is where you're messing up right now. You're just a king in a castle, cut off from the outside world, as we all are. We just get news via our sense data. We just look out the windows. We're trapped in the bone castle of our skull. We're just a mass of jelly, trapped in a bone fortress, receiving news from the outside world via our sense data, via our messengers. And sometimes they tell us something's wrong. And if we ignore it, we can't correct it, and then it compounds, and it compounds, and it grows, and it grows, until it comes and crashes our castle down. That's it. You're welcome, and may you have an amazing day, my friends.